Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's training, Pantheon for Agencies. Your speakers for today are Steve Persh, Agency and Community Engineer, and Dwayne McDaniel, Agency and Community Success Manager, both here at Pantheon. Just a few housekeeping items to go over before we start. Please make sure you submit any questions you have during the presentation in the question window, or tweet them at GetPantheon. We'll answer as many of the questions as we can during the Q&A portion of today's presentation. Also, this training will be recorded, and the recording will be made available to everyone next week. I'd now like to turn it over to Dwayne and Steve.
Thank you very much, Tusa. Hey, everybody, this is Dwayne. I'm Agency and Community Success Manager. And also, we got Steve Persh. Say hey, Steve.
Hi.
Agency and Community Engineer. If you feel so inclined, please go over to the question section and let us know who you are. Say hello to us. Let us know where you're from, if you're working on Drupal or WordPress or both. And feel free to start asking questions. We're going to cover a lot today. We're going to go pretty quick. And we should be able to answer all your questions just in the normal flow of the conversation. But if we fail to do it that way, just ask your questions directly, and we will make sure we get to them by the end of this hour. So without any further ado, let's jump right to it. So for the first bit here, I want to talk about high level what is Pantheon, where we come from, our architecture, and some organizational concepts. We find it good to lay this groundwork ahead of talking about the tools, because Pantheon is very different than traditional managed hosting. So let's get to it. So our story starts, well, with this high-level overview of Pantheon. Over on the right-hand side there, that's the building with the pagoda. That's where I'm sitting here today. You'll hear occasionally bells behind me. That is the streetcars of San Francisco, the trolley cars. But our story actually starts way before this. Our founders were agency founders of Chapter 3 and 4 Kitchens and built hundreds of websites over the last decade, from Berkshire Hathaway, Department of Defense websites, The Economist magazine online, and a lot of other things. And the problem they faced was that it wasn't hard to pick a specific way to build a site. I mean, it requires a lot of setup. You got to put workflows in, manage team credentials because they're working in an agency, figure out what's the right technology stack for this particular job. Should it be a single VM? Should it be a cluster? How do we migrate between those things? For a single site, that's already started to become daunting. For an agency, though, they found it super complicated. And living with the legacy of this, all the updates needed to be done, all the pagers they had to carry, all the teams they had to train, just overwhelming. They said there's got to be a better way to do this. We're doing this by hand every time. Well, why can't we make the machines do the work? Let's build a platform. Let's build a single platform that no matter if we're building a tiny site for a cat blog or we're building patch.com, anything in between, it fits on the same platform. Easy to scale up, easy to get team credentials, easy to add the add-ons of Redis and Solar. We'll talk more about architecture in a second, but conceptually this is Pantheon. It is one platform for every site you build. Right now we're serving about 150,000 websites globally. We'll talk more about that in a second. Why people developing websites really like us is you can launch faster. You can get things up and running in a matter of minutes, not hours or days for provisioning, and start working on that code quicker, collaborating better with teams, especially distributed teams, giving everyone not only a Git repository, but a very, and we'll talk about this later today, the ability to feature branch and version control and configuration of the environments automatically within our system. We call it multi-dev. We can do this all with lower risk since you're no longer worrying about the scaling side of things, just the functionality side of things. You can take on bigger projects with a lot less risk. And as a shop that worries about development, operations, or DevOps, and system then work, we can lower that overall overhead. End users and clients love us because we're fast. There's a wonderful IAB metric of every second of load time is roughly 7% fall off in conversion. Well, you can just be faster, get those conversions up, improve your SEO that way. Reliability, we're very transparent with our uptime across the platform. It stays above 3 nines. You can look historically on status.pantheon.io, just the status button at the bottom of pantheon.io pages, and you see that status button. Again, we can give you as an agency better hooks in to work faster and get more done on the same project dollar. Everybody likes stretching their budgets. And our scalability story is second to none. So they, with confidence, know that if their site is successful as planned, that they're not going to have to re-architect or change things around and migrate to get to that next level of scale. It's just add more Pantheon to it. There's a lot of agencies or customers out there using Pantheon, from higher education. People like Berkeley and ASU have standardized on us. Large media companies like Patch.com, the Boston Herald, and then a lot of high-tech companies love Pantheon because they don't have to worry about building their own stacks for their marketing properties. They just build it on Pantheon. You can find a lot of case studies over on our website under the resources section, and it'll give you a lot more insight into how people are leveraging Pantheon today. What we sell at Pantheon, everything we're going to talk about today is free except for the hosting end of it. When you actually go to production and want to configure DNS, that's the only time you need to worry about paying us. Other than that, it's always free to develop and test on Pantheon. And the tool set we give you, Pantheon for Agencies, which is what we're specifically going to dig into today, that is free for you as well. Just sign up online if you haven't done so already, pantheon.io. So talk about the hosting side and what we do sell. We have basically two kinds of customers on Pantheon. Month-to-month subscription customers. Those are the plans over there on the left in white. The main metric we go guide by is monthly page view, though in reality we're not actually counting page views. It's a very nice proxy. So if you get to 11,000 monthly page views, good for you. Everything went fine and everybody had a good experience. That's awesome. We're not going to kick you into a different bucket or fine you or penalize you in any way for going over that page view limit. However, if you underpower your site, no one's going to have a good time. So we do it by order of magnitudes here. Just knowing your basic traffic patterns and spike events is going to let you manage this in a very concise, clear manner. So going from the $25 a month plan to the $400 a month plan is simply a matter of changing your billing information, and all the rest of the provisioning, configuration, and resource allocation, that is done on the back end for you automatically by the robots. The other kind of customer we have are our contract customers. Far and away, the largest group of this is elite customers, folks where we manage their scale. So for people like the Boston Herald or New Republic, we simply monitor and manage their container usage. So when they get an extra 10 million page views in a day for a story going viral, not a big deal. We simply give them more resources, serve those page requests, and that's part of doing business with us, part of their contract. Also, we have customers that have a lot of properties. We give them a tool called Pantheon Enterprise. It's very similar looking to Pantheon for Agencies. Higher education has their own version as well. If you have a university client, they can actually start for free and work their way up to a single payment contract. And resellers on Pantheon, if you want to be the only name that your customer knows and you're willing to take on that frontline burden and do this at scale, well, we have a program for you. It's called Pantheon Reseller. Again, that's an annual contract vehicle with us as well. But that's what we sell here at Pantheon, and we're happy to answer questions about that. But you can get more information by calling that number there, the 855-927-9387, or going to pantheon.io and going down to the bottom of the page and click Contact Sales. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about what is Pantheon? What is this thing we have built? Pantheon is a single multi-tenant platform. We are one big honking application built inside of Rackspace in Chicago. So we're not reselling Rackspace hosting, we are built on top of their infrastructure though. We handle about 6 billion page views a month at this point, over 1 million containers running at any given time across all of their infrastructure. And there's 3 basic layers to this thing of Pantheon. This is really what sets us apart from traditional managed hosting, is we're delivering an edge layer that handles load balancing and routing for everyone. So for our large-scale customers and for the people with one site that gets 1,000 visitors a month. Same edge handles it all. We bake in varnish at this level, so you get best-in-breed reverse proxy caching, automatically configured, automatically tuned. You don't have to install anything. It just works. Beneath that layer at the edge, we have our Runtime Matrix. This is where PHP and Nginx get executed inside of containers. This is part of our scale story combined with Varnish on top. When you get additional page requests, adding additional containers is as simple as plugging in Legos. Change billing information, and it's a matter of seconds, not days or hours or even minutes before those containers are up and running and taking on that additional page requests. It also provides no single point of failure. Every container is backed up by another container somewhere as a hot standby. So in case the machine that you're on catches fire, there's another machine inside Rackspace already running that container somewhere else, ready to pick up and keep going. Combined with Varnish, no one experiences downtime on the front end. Beneath this runtime matrix, there is our content layer. It's MariaDB, good old-fashioned MySQL with use the tools you like today. We even let you plug in Redis at this level, so if you're doing more database-intensive things, we can help with that kind of scale as well. And that's added in a touch of a button under settings. This is also the layer where we give you Valhalla. Valhalla is our file system we wrote to be always in sync and extremely scalable. Devs love it because you treat it just like local. It performs faster than local in some cases because it's super ultra cached and is built all SSD throughout. But it's going to behave like the best network file system you ever laid eyes on. So it just scales with you, and you don't have to think about, am I using the right file system for my code? With Pantheon, the answer is always yes. We're happy to answer any questions around architecture and that as we keep going today, and feel free to use that question window. I already see people popping up in there now with questions. But before we move on to actual tool usage, one of the things we most commonly answer when we get on the phone with folks or answer emails is, how does my account work? How does my account work with relation to billing and all of that? Which always begs the question of, well, what do you mean by account? On Pantheon, this means three different things. There are three organizational concepts on the platform. Each of these have a corresponding dashboard, and we're going to walk through this about what each of these mean very briefly, high level, and how they interrelate, and then we'll kick things over and actually talk about how to use the tools. Let's start with sites. Sites are a set of dedicated environments, dev, test, and live, and in the case of Pantheon for Agencies, also multi-dev instances. A site can have as many individual users as it needs to and be connected to as many supporting organizations as it needs to. We'll get back to supporting organizations here in a second. But a site dashboard is the most common dashboard you're going to live in with Pantheon, with your code info, your team management built right in. Users, we are enforcing every user should have their own account. No more shared passwords around. All the credentials that user will need are baked into the platform under the site settings and under their user settings. So no more master account that everyone logs into and security risks that come with that. No more passing around passwords via spreadsheets. User dashboards are the first thing you see when you log into Pantheon. You can, by default that is anyway, you can change that around if you so choose. But this is where you're going to set machine tokens, SSH keys, and change basic account information. It's also where you can see all the sites you're currently assigned to as an individual user and the organizations you belong to. I belong to a lot of orgs, and that's the example I used. Organizations. This is where we advance the theory of organizational concepts when dealing with hosting. We allow an entire team to have as many users as it needs to with individual sets of permissions and connect to entire websites at once. So this is the product for Pantheon for Enterprise, Reseller, Pantheon for Agencies, and EDU. For when a group is working on sites. This is what an org dashboard looks like. Everyone on this webinar should have signed up, or if you haven't already, we invite you to sign up for this tool, Pantheon for Agencies. It gives you a nice clean list view of all of the projects you're working on, a lot of metadata exposed about them, and a tagging system. So you're working with dozens of sites, your tagging and sort system is going to become crucial for managing that in the long term. This is also where you can manage permissions for various team members. So let's talk about that and how this relates to ownership on Pantheon. It's one of the more common questions we get is how does all site ownership work? Very simply, a site is owned by a user. Most of the time, it's going to be a single user who gets control of that site by paying for the site. We have this built-in function called invite business owner to pay. It's the first thing you'll see under settings on most sites. A single owner user will become the owner. They can assign additional team members who have full access to that site, be able to take things live to production. And that owner can also add in entire organizations to support that site as well as supporting organizations. Organizations, on the other hand, don't have owners, they have administrators. So when we talk about ownership on Pantheon, we mean a very specific thing. It's the person who controls and owns a site. Administrators, on the other hand, can set permissions within their organization to set, org members, org team members, I should say, can't kick a site out of the project. So can't kick a site off of that site list, but they can't affect the live environments. Developers, on the other hand, can only impact the development and multi-dev environments for any project that that group is working on. Very safe way to bring on new people or to work with outside contractors. Let's look at a really quick example before I kick things over to Steve. Here we have our person, Linda. She is a great developer and she builds a great agency. She signs up for Pantheon for agencies and they win a bid to build Terry a website. So she creates a brand new instance on our new site on Pantheon. She is the default owner because she created it. Her entire agency is connected automatically because she created it from within Pantheon for agencies. So there's the site. The whole team is working on it. They're getting it ready to go. As launch day approaches, Linda uses the invite business owner to pay functionality under settings to get Terry to pay for the site. He then becomes the user of Pantheon that owns the site, but her great agency, Linda's great agency, stays connected to that site with full access they had before. They can do all their updates, all their adjustments as needed. But should their contract expire, Terry wants to keep the site going but break that tie with great agency, he can easily do so. If he wants to hire on additional agencies to do even more work, adding them in is a simple line under team settings of adding that person or adding that agency in at once as a supporting organization. So that is the super high level of Pantheon conceptually, and we're happy now to answer a few questions as we're doing this transition over. But Steve, I'm going to kick things over to you.
Great. So yeah, we'll switch over the screen share, and I do want to call out one question that we've gotten since we started. We do have a question about Drush SQL Sync and whether or not it works on the platform. I'm going to paste into the chat window our documentation on that topic. As of February, Drush SQL Sync does work. That corresponds to a new version of Drush 8.0.4. So I'm going to paste in both the documentation page on the topic, and one of the nice parts about our documentation site is that it's fully open to the public, and that you can see the full Git history of our documentation site, and I've linked to the point at which our documentation on Drush SQL Sync changed. I'll quit out of Slack here to stop that bouncing. So Dwayne, can you confirm that you can see my Firefox window here? I've got my own personal dashboard here.
I can confirm I see that, Steve. Thank you.
Great. All right, so what I'm going to jump into now is a walkthrough of our dashboard, and what I'm leading up to here is an example workflow on a single site. We'll be taking a change both from a development environment out to a live environment. We'll also be making changes in a multi-dev environment, highlighting how multiple developers can work together on the same project. So starting here first and foremost with this user dashboard. We just heard from Dwayne, we've got three key concepts. We've got the concept of an individual user, we have the concept of individual sites, and we have organizations which can be connected to both users and sites. So logged in here as a single user, I'm connected to a number of test sites that I've spun up for all kinds of testing purposes. We'll be taking a look at one of these sites in particular. We've also got a number of organizations that I'm connected to, a lot of training organizations and a lot of testing organizations. I'm going to jump over to this Bicycles in the Bayou organization. This is an organization we made to demonstrate things at DrupalCon New Orleans. So what I have here in my organizational dashboard, again, is a list of all the sites connected to that organization. I can filter by things like the plan level that the site is on, a tagging system, which is a lot like free tagging in Drupal or WordPress itself. If you want to have tags for things like, is this site in active development, or is this site one of our long-term maintenance sites? You can use tags for just about any organizational purpose you want. I can also filter down by upstream to see the sites that are built on Drupal 8 or WordPress or more specific versions of Drupal, like Panoply, which is a distribution of Drupal. I can also see which sites here have updates to the core software available, as well as the specific person who owns the site. Organizations, again, of course, have the connection to individual team members. Those team members can have different roles within the organization. Upstreams, this is the concept of a starter set of code. So this is particularly popular in both the agency context and, say, the university context. In the university context, they may have an upstream for sites that are for academic departments and sites that are for student organizations. Those two upstreams both serve as start states for new sites. They also serve as a way to send the same updates to however many sites you have implemented using those upstreams. We've got a roll-up of support for this organization, as well as a few settings at the organizational level. I'm going to jump now over to my site dashboard. This is the dashboard that you would spend most of your time interacting with Pantheon, more so than your user dashboard or your organization dashboard. The purpose here is working with individual sites. So what I want to call out first and foremost with individual sites is that we are modeling the basic best practice in Drupal or WordPress, wherever you're doing it, that you need some separate environments. We've modeled this as development environments, testing environments, and a live environment. The basic idea here, whether you're using Pantheon or whether or not you are doing this all yourself with custom infrastructure, the basic idea remains the same. Code moves up from your development environments, be they local environments or Pantheon development environments, up to a testing or staging environments where you can simulate the deployment of your code changes before they go out to your actual live site. All the while, code is moving up, we have content moving down. So our new WordPress posts or our Drupal nodes are living canonically on the live site. That's where our real users are logging in, making changes, adding content, adding posts, adding images. We then sync that real content down both to the test site as well as development sites. So jumping back over to the Pantheon dashboard here, we have Pantheon's implementation of dev, test, and live. I have a development site here. I can click Visit Development Site, and I'm going to a unique URL for our development environment. This development site has its own copy of the code base, its own database, its own everything. What we can see here is that the background color is light pink. So what we'll be working through today is our imagined client here, Mission Bicycle, no longer likes pink as a background color. They want to change the background color. So we're going to make those changes, again, not in our test and live environment. We make changes in dev or multi-dev environments. If I look at the live environment, again, we have a unique URL specific to the live environment, live-bicycles in the Bayou Perche instead of dev. Over on our live site, we can see it's still pink. The client no longer likes pink. And we can see that this version of the site has both of its sidebar elements on one side. Our imagined workflow here is that the client no longer wants pink, and they want these sidebars split up. So in this example, over on our dev site, the sidebars have already been split up. The task remaining for a developer is to change the background color. Touching a little bit more on the dashboard before I dive into making that background color change, I want to highlight the options available in all of your environments. In each environment, you can look at the code present in that environment. Here in our dev environment, I can see all of the commits present in the dev environment. The dev environment is tied permanently to the master branch of the Git repository for this site. Every site on Pantheon has its own Git repository. The dev environment, again, is tied to the master branch. Test and live run off of tags in the Git repository. Multi-dev environments, which we'll be looking at in just a minute, are environments for each new Git branch that you may have. So in our development environment, we can work both in SFTP mode, doing on-server development. We can also work in Git mode, make changes locally, and then push them up to the Git repository. Under this connection information, I can see here's how I would clone my Git repository from my site down to local. If I want to connect directly to my MySQL database, again, for this specific environment, I can do that as well as open up the site in an SFTP client. I also have the option to merge in from other environments. Right now, because I'm in SFTP mode, I can't merge, but we'll see that in just a minute. I can see an overview of some status checks. With database and files, it's a common task to bring down those code, or I should say, bring down those content and file changes from the live environment or from the test environment down to your dev environments. No PHP errors to report right now. That's great. If I wanted to tie custom domains to this environment, I could. That's, again, most commonly done with the live environment, hooking up your real domain. But if you wanted dev.example.com connected to the dev environment, you can do that as well. You can trigger backups anytime you want, as well as scheduled backups for paid sites. We also have the ability to turn on basic HTTP authentication on a per environment basis. Some clients don't want the public to be able to find their dev or test environments, so that's something you can do per site. Something I won't dive into in great detail here because we've had more specific webinars on it, but I do just want to call out that every site on Pantheon gets New Relic Pro, and this is even available per environment. So what we're looking at here is just the dashboard for the live environment of this site, looking at New Relic stats. I can see here where there's spikes in response times. I can see the slowest transactions, the slowest scripts, basically, for this site. And again, we have dedicated documentation on New Relic. What I want to jump to now is that agency workflow. Basically, how do we have multiple developers working together in order to make changes to a site? So if you're working alone, it's probably just fine to have one development environment, your one test environment, and your live environment. However, if you're working with multiple developers, we're going to jump ahead here to our multi-dev idea. Basically, the idea that you can have multiple environments, either per developer, per feature, maybe a development environment specific to QAing a subset of features, maybe even as far as multi-dev environment per bug ticket. This is really up to individual teams to decide what they want to do with multi-dev environments. What we'll be showing here is the idea that we've made a multi-dev environment specific to changing this background color back to white. So I have a list of multi-dev environments. I've been changing colors. I've been making updates to the sidebar. A while back, I used a multi-dev environment specifically to do the update to Drupal 8.1.5. We're going to jump over to this multi-dev environment to change the background color back to white. So again, I get a unique URL for this environment. I get all the same options in my sidebar. I can see code changes. I can see status. If I wanted to do specific New Relic debugging to this environment, I could do that as well. So the first thing that I want to do is bring over the commits that have been made in master over to my multi-dev environment. So I can see here that the sidebars have changed over in that master branch, over in that development environment, and I want to bring those changes in just so that I have the latest of all the changes while I'm working in my multi-dev environment. So I'm going to click this merge button, and that's going to bring those changes in. The next thing I want to do is flip over to SFTP mode and start making changes. Now, another thing that I want to highlight in this webinar is our command line tool, Terminus. Terminus is a way to do the same kinds of operations that are available in the dashboard on the command line. So in my terminal window here, I can run the command terminus, and what that will show me is an overview of all the commands that I can run. So for instance, if I just wanted to authenticate, if I wanted to sign in to terminus the same way I would sign in to the dashboard, I can run terminus auth, and it shows me that I have subcommands like logging in. I can log in with an email address and password. We now recommend machine tokens as the best way to do logins. You can log out. If you've got a number of test accounts like I do, you might just want to run terminus auth who am I to see who you are logged in as, and in this case I'm signed in as one of my test accounts. Going back to that top level list of all terminus commands, I can see that I can run this terminus art command, which will give me some nice ASCII art. I've got the Drupal logo there. I've got the Pantheon logo along with a terminus logo in ASCII art. So again, this is a way to do basically everything you can do in the dashboard on the command line. And just like in the dashboard, most of your time would be spent interacting with an individual site. Let's take a look at the commands that are available for an individual site. So as I run terminus site, what I get is a listing of all the commands that are available to run for one specific site. And the very first command in the list is terminus site backups. I like this command because it's one of the first commands I started using with Terminus, back even before I worked at Pantheon, just as I was interested in using the command line tools to do scripted setups of my local environments. So for all kinds of reasons, you may want to make backups on your own schedule beyond the regular backups that Pantheon does through the dashboard by default. So let's imagine that you just want to make a new backup. So what I'm going to run is terminus site backups create, and then it'll start giving me a menu of options for where do I want to create a backup. So let's say that I want to create a backup from the live environment. I can select that from this menu, and let's say I just want to make a backup of the database. I'll select that as well, and then in response to filling out these options, a new database backup will be created, and then that database backup will be available to be downloaded. So I've run terminus site backups create. If I wanted to run terminus site backup get, and I could even pre-fill in, say, the environment name live, it then doesn't have to show me the menu for what environment am I pulling from. And let's say I want the database, and there are all my backups for the database. Let's say I just want that top one of the list, giving me my latest database backup. There's an Amazon link that I could use to download that database. So jumping back to this real example here, though, what I want to do, though, is put this site in SFTP mode so that I can edit the CSS in this environment specific to changing the background color. So I could just click this SFTP button to flip over to SFTP mode, but I do want to show off what Terminus can do, so I can run the command terminus site set connection mode, and the mode that I'm setting it to is SFTP because it's already in Git mode, and it's asking me which environment I want to do that for, and I want to do it for the white environment where I'll be changing the background color from that light pink color back to white. So as I run that command, I can jump back over to the dashboard and see that it's already in progress. The dashboard is updating as soon as I start making the command in Terminus, and that's something we'll see as well as I do other operations with Terminus. So I now want to open up my SFTP client, and just to get the SFTP connection information, I can run Terminus site connection info, and it will give me all the same connection info that I have available in the dashboard. And I think I selected the wrong environment there. So for my multi-dev environment, there's all my connection information. It's also available here in the dashboard. So if I want just the SFTP connection information, I can grab that here and open up my command line for my SFTP tool of choice, which is transmit. So as I open this up here, I can see that transmit is responding, and it's now showing me an overview of my container. So I can jump into code here And what I have now is my entire Drupal 8 site. There's index.php. The thing that I want to be doing, though, is change my background color. So I'm jumping over to the theme for this site, jumping over to the CSS file, opening that up, editing it in SFTP mode. I'm just going to scroll down to where I know the background color is being set, and I'm changing it from light pink, and I'll just go back to simple FFF. And as I visit this site now, I can see that the background color has switched from pink to white. Now, before I were to go ahead and pass this on to my client, I remember, well, the client also specifically requested that those sidebars be updated. So again, if I look at my development site, I can see that the sidebars are already changed there, 2 sidebars instead of 1. If I were to pass on this URL right now to my client, they might say, hey, why are the sidebars still on the wrong side? I want 2 sidebars instead of 1. So I've already merged in the code changes from my development environment to this multi-dev environment. What I now need to do is import to the database those configuration changes that were made in code. This is one of the nice parts about Drupal 8. Drupal 8 has a very easy way to take the changes that are made in the database and then move them over to code. So to import these configuration changes, I'm going to use drush. So again, with this top-level terminus command, I can see all the commands available to me. And what I want to run specifically is a drush command that will import these configuration changes. So I'll do terminus drush, and the drush command that I want to run is config import. And it'll, again, ask me what environment I want to run this on, and I want to run it on that multi-dev environment. And this will take just a few seconds to complete. But actually, as I run that, I remember that I do need to specifically say that, yes, I do want to do a config import. So this is the kind of operation that can be done manually. As I deploy these changes that I'm making out to test or live, we'll see that this is the kind of change that you wouldn't necessarily want to do manually every time. As you're doing development, I think it's often preferable to do things sometimes in a more manual way, in a more controlled fashion. But when deploying these kinds of configuration changes out to your test site or your live site, that's the kind of thing that you would probably want to be done in an automated fashion. So as I refresh this environment here, I can see that my sidebars are now on both sides, and I've got the background color that I want. So I could then tell my client, hey, check out this URL. This is a URL that has all the changes that you want. Are these changes approved? Can we move these straight to the development environment? So it's really up to you and your team to decide at what point do you want the approvals from your client. Maybe your team just wants the approvals in the development environment. Maybe you want to get approvals in multi-dev. That's really up to you. So what I'm going to do now is imagine that the client has approved these changes, and what they now want is these changes to be deployed out. So jumping back over to the dashboard here, what I'm doing is flipping the development site into Git mode so that I can merge the changes that were made in that multi-dev environment for the white background color. I can merge those changes now into my development environment. And for the sake of expediency, I'm going to switch from Terminus to using the dashboard. As I can see, we're getting close to the end of our webinar here. So I'm now going to use the dashboard options, and I'm merging the multi-dev environment named white into the dev environment, which again is doing a merge into the master branch. Once this merge is complete, it'll then be available to push out to the test environment. So as I jump over to my test environment here, I can see that there are now commits available to be pulled in. So I've been making dashboard changes, and I've been merging multi-dev environments. So just to confirm that I've got the changes that I want, I'm going to open up that development environment, and I don't see the background color change that I expected, so I wonder if I just need to clear caches. or perhaps the merge hadn't fully completed there. I think the merge simply hadn't fully completed, but I'll clear the caches anyway. So once the merge is complete and these caches are cleared in my development environment, my expectation is that I'll see the background color that the client expects in the dev environment, along with those sidebar changes, 2 sidebars instead of 1. So I'm still getting pink here as a background color. And I wonder, Dwayne, have I simply just been working too fast and merged the wrong branch here?
It wouldn't be a webinar or a live demo if everything went flawlessly, Steve. So
all right. Well, just to double check, I'm going to pull these changes down to my local Git checkout and just verify that I did that merge correctly. So I'm on the master branch here, and I'll do a Git pull on the master branch and just verify that the merge that I expected to happen actually happened. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Oh, right on. I'm just saying, for the sake of time, did want to make sure we get these questions answered there.
Sure, go ahead.
You're doing it in the background. Maybe we can just have this conversation.
Yeah.
So let's go most recent, last one first out. Can you confirm if the if SQL CLI is available via Terminus or Drush? So we do make it fully available to have access to your MySQL, but correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. I don't. Database direct MySQL commands are not built into Terminus at this point, are they?
So you can connect directly to MySQL using this connection information. So just to show that off, what I'll do here is copy this connection string, and it'll give me a direct connection to show my tables here. So there it is, just a direct MySQL connection.
Yeah, but it's nothing specific we did in Terminus. It's just a regular old MySQL connection. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could put it into Terminus, but I don't think there would be any advantage there. It's faster to just use your native MySQL tool.
There you go, Stanley. So related actually to that, we had a question if you could quickly show an example of database or file cloning using Terminus, using our workflow tools via the Terminus command.
Sure. I'll do that now. And Dwayne, I now think I know which piece I moved past too quickly. I don't know if I actually committed the color change that I made.
Yes, you need to commit things to get them to show up.
Yes.
That's true.
All right, but to answer that question specifically, let's do that. So Terminus site is the command that we want here. Terminus site, and we're asking about cloning content, I think was the question. So I can do Terminus site clone content, and I want to go from the environment live. Let's say I want to clone to the environment dev. And let me just make sure I paste the right things. Terminus site clone content from the environment live to the environment dev. And it'll just ask, do I really want to clone both the database and the files? Yes, I do. And just for fullness, I'll point out here that if you did want to clone only the database or only the files, you could pass that in as a flag as well.
Yep. And I just pasted that out into the chat for everyone and answered publicly. This is all available via GitHub. The link is on the Pantheon docs to get to the Terminus project, and this is all pretty well documented. But I pasted those links that you need, the main link you need, into chat.
Mm-hmm. So I think I did move too fast through the changing of those colors. So I'm just going to do that again here from my local. And Dwayne, were there any other questions?
Yeah, it's actually related to our Quicksilver implementation and
Sure.
BHAT. So did Pantheon implement some webhooks to work with CI systems like Jenkins or external GitHub repositories?
Yes. So I'm pushing up this this background color change to the dev environment, and because I've committed a change, what I'm going to get here over in this Slack channel is a report on the commits that I'm making. So as I'm making commits, and even as I'm doing deployments, which you'll see in just a minute here, this Slack channel is getting information posted to it. The way it's getting that information posted is through what was just alluded to, Quicksilver. So Quicksilver is a system for responding to Pantheon level events. And Quicksilver takes its definition from this Pantheon YAML file. So I have my site opened up here locally. I've got pantheon.yaml here right in the root of my Git repository. And I can see that for this site, we're responding to the workflow operations of syncing code or deploying code. We could also be responding to things like cloning databases or clearing caches, but for talking to external systems, it's more likely that you'd be doing that in response to code pushes, or even more so code deployments. So in response to code deployments here, we're notifying Slack, we're importing our Drupal 8 YAML configuration, we're notifying New Relic. You could also call off to something like Jenkins. We have examples for that if the thing that you want to do in response to every deployment to test or live is fire off a BHAT script, for instance. So to show that in action here, I think I now have my background color change pushed to the dev environment. Great. Let's imagine that our client sees the dev environment and approves that. They now want to see that change pushed out to the test environment. So background and sidebars have changed in this deployment. So as I click this button, we're getting the database and files pulled down from the live environment while code is coming up from the dev environment. And we'll see in that Slack channel more of these notifications coming in. So in this example, what we're doing in response to every deployment is calling out to this loader.io tool for doing load testing. And really what we're seeing here in this graph is Varnish in action in response to the first couple requests from loader, or maybe just the first one request. There's a spike in load time, and then Varnish kicks in because Varnish is fully caching the response, and then the responses come much, much faster after that initial slower load. For running more complex operations or custom operations, then now you probably would want to use your own Jenkins instance. As I jump back over to our dashboard here, I can see that the deployment out from dev to test is almost complete, and once it is, we'll see that change of background color and sidebars present in the test environment. While I wait for that to happen, I'll jump over to our Quicksilver examples repository. If you are interested in learning more about Quicksilver, I recommend checking out this repository of various examples. So some operations that are running on this actual site, we're calling off to a visual regression testing service. We're importing our configuration changes. If you wanted to talk specifically to Jenkins, you could do that. If you want to log all of your deployments in New Relic, which I think is a good idea for just about any site that may want to track performance over time, you can do that with this New Relic example.
And I just put that link out into chat as well as a couple of other links, including a link to another webinar we did with one of our partners, MindGrub, who actually use Quicksilver. They're early adopter of Quicksilver to actually do deployments via Slack through Jenkins and Terminus. It's a very interesting workflow, and they talk about how they did it, and R.A. Gold from our team, one of the engineers behind the Quicksilver integrations, talks a little more in depth about this aspect of Pantheon. But I put that link in there. It's the second link in chat after Terminus.
Yeah, and we might as well show doing deployments through Terminus to imagine at least one piece of that workflow Dwayne just alluded to. So we just saw a deployment happening through the dashboard, but I wanted to do a deployment from Terminus, and then perhaps even trigger that deployment through Slack involving Jenkins. I could build up a command like terminus site deploy. The environment that I'm deploying to is the live environment, and I'll fill in this note of background and sidebars are changing. I can then run that directly from Terminus, and it's the same as if I were to use this UI to make that change.
Just wanted to say we got a few minutes left here, folks. Either we've explained everything super thoroughly and you're out there reading the docs as we speak, or we completely lost you. But either way, let us know if you have additional questions in the remaining time while Steve is showing this off.
Yeah, so this deployment to live kicks off some of the same operations that we saw when deploying to the test environment. We can see here the Slack channel is getting notifications that a deployment has started for the live environment, and the configuration changes are getting imported, moving the sidebars around.
So that's all as well. I'm just sending the link out to doing WordPress and BHAT testing to answer that question from earlier. Oh, thanks, Matt. Said we did a great demo here, Steve. Not really a question, but we're happy to take.
Great.
So a couple last things I will say we didn't talk about is everything we talked about, and we sent links to it. We have great documentation around, and we're very proud to say open source documentation. So everything is on GitHub. If you see something where it needs a spelling correction, or you have a new idea, or you're using Pantheon in a unique way, you want to share it with our document team, do a pull request. It's just GitHub, and we're happy to communicate with you that way. Other things, we have some great training webinars. I don't know if you can pull that resources page up here, Steve. I can put it over in chat. If you go to pantheon.io/resources, or just Pantheon.io and click on the resources button up at the top, you will see a webinar training series. So everything we talked about today, to give you this high-level overview and a quick example of how these things work, is a 6-part webinar series called Training Series Pantheon for Agencies. I'm going to go ahead and pop that link out into chat here. Yep, the one you're showing. There on the resource page up toward the top. Oh, we do have a couple more questions here. Quickly, what is the best Pantheon workflow model to use if you have multiple content manager and multiple developers? Oh, that would be... Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. We recommend that content managers work in the live environment as much as possible. That's really what Drupal and WordPress are built for, content being added in the live environment. There are a number of modules available for doing content workflows all within the live environment. So before working at Pantheon, in part of my previous job, I worked on the Workbench moderation module. And that was a module for Drupal meant to do content moderation all on the live environment. Those modules for doing content moderation, content publishing workflows are getting much better in Drupal 8, especially as you get into more complex workflow, like doing deployments across environments. So by default, Drupal and WordPress expect content to be coming from the live environment, and that's really not a Pantheon decision. That's just the way the CMSs expect things to happen. But both Drupal and WordPress are actively working on tools that will allow content to be staged and approved across environments.
And then, let's see, I'm going to put a couple of links out there into the chat. Excuse the background noise, we are in San Francisco. So to talk about the workflow, and I'm going to send that to all, and a little bit more about the multi-dev. So those combined are the best possible answer to that situation. And the last, very last thing here is around SSL. I noticed the SSL is additional fee. Yes, to terminate an SSL certificate on Pantheon requires an additional fee to enable you to terminate it on Pantheon. However, we're working with some great providers out there like Cloudflare and Fastly, where you can do CDN level SSL. So for your SEO reasons, for most reasons you want to do SSL, you can absolutely get that done via there. There's a great document out there. I'll throw that in the chat as well. Since I'm putting up docs.
And that's what I do myself. Almost 2 years ago now, when Cloudflare introduced their free HTTPS option, I had a personal site on Pantheon, and I immediately connected them up. So that's a very easy way to do HTTPS for free with Cloudflare and any Pantheon site.
So, okay, threw that into the chat, and that's all we got time for today. Thank you very much for your time and attention, everyone. Thank you for using Pantheon. Our team here, the Agency and Community Engineering and Success, we're happy to work with you as you're getting started with Pantheon, help you get trained, enabled. So never feel restricted on reaching out to us. You can reach me at Dwayne, D-W-A-Y-N-E, at pantheon.io about anything, and I'm happy to be your initial point of contact for any follow-up questions, for anything else at all. So thank you very much for the time, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.